Hello everybody and welcome back. I haven't made a video in a while simply because I haven't had anything to talk about when it comes to the firearms. But this particular thing I want to talk about has to do with the strike that only lasted a couple days, and all of a sudden miraculously things, were settled until, November or next year, something like that. And the president of that International Longshoremen's Association is Harold J. Daggett. I will put a link to the video that he is on where he's explaining why they're going on strike and all that. Now, I'm all for unions, and I'm all for one thing that he does say about all this automation of shit. He has said a few things in there. I remember growing up, and when you would go through the tolls, there was somebody there you handed, your ticket to, and you would pay your toll when you went through the tolls on the highway. Now they're all gone. Now you just drive through and you get a picture taken of your driver's license and they send you a bill. That's because of automation. They started with that easy pass, started out slow, and the next thing you know, all those jobs that Americans had are gone now. They're all gone. Another thing that's happening, you can't go to any kind of a store. It's not a small little mom and pop store. You can't go to any kind of Home Depot, Walmart or anything without seeing all these automatic checkouts. They're taking jobs away from Americans with all this automatic checkout. All these cashiers are losing their jobs. So I can understand and I agree with him with what he's saying about, they want to have in the contract with no automation. So that these, workers don't lose their jobs. But there's a thing, and what he says, if you watch that video and you listen to what he says, it proves. And it proves with Donald Trump. And yes, I am a Trump supporter. But it proves, without a doubt, it proves everything that Donald Trump has been saying. And anybody, I feel, who has a brain in their head should realize this. He says, and I'm going to paraphrase some of the stuff, so it's not word for word. You can watch the video. I'll leave a link to it below. You can watch the whole video. It's not that long. It's about 17 minutes long. But he says, he says the people don't know what a strike is anymore. He says the first week you'll hear about it on the news. They'll be talking about it on the news, blah, 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 and all that. He says the second week you'll start see car dealers will start getting laid off because there won't be any cars coming, because the cars are coming off those ships and then going to the dealerships. They won't have the cars. They'll start getting laid off and losing their jobs. He says the third week you'll see the malls start to close. And that's like, a big shopping mall or Walmarts and stuff like that start to close down because they won't have clothing, everyday supplies, and all that stuff because of, everything coming off of those boats from China. So he says that. And then he says everything in the U.S. comes in on the ships. Construction will stop because they won't have materials. They won't have the steel. They won't have the lumber. in order to do the jobs. You know, medications. There's not a whole lot of, if any. There's a few, maybe, medications made in the United States. Most of it comes from overseas. From all to China, India, all this. You know, he says it in that video. And that's what his guys are doing. All through the pandemic. They worked through the pandemic. They busted their ass to get all the goods off those ships so that America could be supplied, and all of the medications and everything else you can think of that are going to go to hospitals, all getting off those ships and getting sent to the hospitals to help the sick. He says it. Now, he doesn't mention hospital stuff, but he mentions, you know, everything that America has, that America's using, comes off those ships. Well, and then he says, I'll cripple you. He goes, if we don't get what we want, I'll cripple you. I'll shut all these things down, and nothing will come off those ships. Now, the one thing that he's forgetting is if we had strong leadership, like we did when we had Ronald Reagan. If you look back, anybody who is, say, my age or older, you know, I'm almost, I am 60. I'm 59, you know. So I'll be 60 next year. But I remember when those air traffic controllers went on strike, they shut the whole country down because of, you know, going on strike. Nobody could go anywhere. Freight couldn't, you know, be flown in and out and all that kind of stuff. And it was causing a real problem. Well, Ronald Reagan was a strong enough leader. He said, listen, I'm going to give you a certain amount of time to work this out. They didn't work it out. He told them, get your ass back to work. They didn't go back to work. He fired every single one of them, and he brought the military in there and people who knew how to do those jobs, and he put them all in there, and he got all those airports open again and got things moving. If you have somebody like Kamala Harris wins and she becomes president, those longshoremen go on strike, she's going to be too weak. She's not going to do anything. And this country will shut down. Trump will say, get your ass back to work. If you don't get back to work, start your negotiations. We'll help with the negotiations. And if that doesn't pan out, you're not going to shut this country down. Get your ass back to work. If you don't, I'm bringing the military in. I'll have the military run those cranes. I'll have the military load those trucks. And then the truckers, they can take the trucks on and take it through the country. And old Harold Daggett won't be able to do anything about it. And that's what a strong leader can do. But the thing that Trump has been saying, and we all know it, none of this would happen, and no one person who's the head of a union, and unions are great, I'm not, putting down unions. Nobody should have the power to be able to shut a country down. Period. That's just the way that it is. And this is the United States of America. We have everything we need, except for maybe a few minerals and stuff. We have everything we need. The United States should be self-sufficient. We can make our own clothes. We have the ability to do that. We can make our own steel. We can make all that stuff we can make. We can make our own medications. We don't have to import lumber. We have forests. We have all that shit. We don't need to do this. There's no reason that even if the longshoremen were to go on strike, say, oh, I'll cripple you. Well, not if we're cutting our own trees down. Not if we're making our own steel. Not if we're building cars and the factories are here in the United States. Not if we're making our own clothes in the United States with textile mills. Not if we're drilling for our own oil. We don't need oil barges coming in here. We have enough oil, we can get the Keystone Pipeline. That oil will be running through a pipeline. Longshoremen don't need to be taking nothing off a boat. That's what strong leadership is, and that's what America needs to get back to. And I remember, and I don't know if you can find it on YouTube video, there was a debate with Bill Clinton and Ross Perot. And I remember sitting there as a young kid, a teenager, and my father saying, Ross Perot's 100% right. Because Ross Perot told Bill Clinton in a debate, he said, if you sign NAFTA, the National Free Trade Agreement, he said, if you sign NAFTA, you're going to hear a huge whooshing sound. And that whooshing sound is going to be the sound of every American job leaving the United States to go overseas. And that is exactly what happened. And that's why when Trump got in there, he shut NAFTA down. You look at, and this will be the last thing I'll say. We'll just pick one company. Apple. Everybody wants the new Apple iPhone. Everybody wants that. Well, Apple's making a ton of money. All of their phones are made in China. Under slave labor or cheap labor. They're giving them, what do they make? $5 a month? And they're making them, and then they bring them over here, and then they sell them for $1,000 or more for that phone. And Apple's making a killing. And there's not one factory over here for Americans to be making those Apple phones. Not one. And there's other companies that you got Ford and all these American car companies. They want to make all their cars over in Mexico and overseas and all that kind of stuff. And all Americans lose their jobs. That's why we need the right leader. Whether you believe it's Trump or whoever may come down the line later on, but I can tell you right now, it ain't Kamala Harris. America needs to rebuild its factories, to give its people jobs. They need to stop spending all this money. They spent all this money on migrants. $650 billion they have spent on migrants to where they completely drained the emergency, supply for all these hurricane, victims. For Helena. So you have FEMA, doesn't have any money. They're broke. So Kamala Harris comes, we'll give each person $750. $750 won't even be able to buy a family of 4 groceries for a month. But they give all these immigrants free housing and they give them all kinds of money and all kinds of free stuff. and Americans are just shit on. People in this country need to wake the hell up. And whether you like Trump or not, it's the truth. There is no factories, nothing's being made, and my proof is all you got to do, and I'll leave the link like I said below. Just watch that video of the International Longshoremen's Association. And I agree, they should be making good money because they have a dangerous job. But he tells you. He's not lying. When he tells you no steel, no lumber, nothing will come into this country because everything comes on those ships. Nothing will come into this country if they go on strike and he can shut this country down. He's telling the truth. But that shouldn't have to happen. That should never have to happen because we should be making all that stuff right here in America and giving Americans good paying jobs. And we shouldn't have to rely on other countries that hate us to send everything over here and have one union be able to shut this entire country down and not be able to, and we were not able to have medications, things to build with, cars to drive, all this stuff. That's not the way it should be. And it's time for a change. So that's all I wanted to say. Check out the link in the description below. And don't take my word for it. You can hear it from the Longshoremen's union leader himself say everything that we use in the United States comes off those ships. And that shouldn't be. That should not be. He says it himself. And he knows what he's talking about. So, thank you for watching. And I hope everybody who has been impacted by that hurricane and the one that's coming, you have my thoughts and prayers. And try to stay safe. If they tell you to get out, get out. You can always try to rebuild a home. You can't rebuild a life if you lose it. So, have a good rest of your weekend, and I wish everybody the best of health and the best of luck. Okay, bye-bye now.